Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something our sources are calling a geo-economic war. It's between India and China, and we're focusing on India's Made in India ambitions, sort of taking on China's massive Made in China engine.
Right, and the battlefield isn't tanks, obviously, it's policy. Think India's production-linked incentive schemes, the PLI, and these efforts to, well, strategically decouple.
But there's a big catch right from the start, isn't there?
Yeah.
This paradox.
Exactly. That's the core contradiction. India is pushing hard for self-reliance, this Atmanirbhar idea. But, the reality is it's still deeply dependent on China.
Dependent how?
For really critical stuff. High-value electronic components, active pharmaceutical ingredients for medicines, things you absolutely need. That dependency, that's the strategic vulnerability.
Okay, that asymmetry sounds significant. If India is really trying to step away, just how big is that gap currently? Can we put a number on it?
Oh, yeah, we definitely can. China is still India's biggest trading partner, no question. And the imbalance, it's structural. Look at July 2025 alone.
Okay.
The trade deficit, India buying more from China than selling to it, was over $9.5 billion in 1 month.
Wow. $9.5 billion. That's a massive figure for just a month. It's almost like a tax India pays China just to grow its own economy.
That's a good way to put it. And it's not just the overall amount, it's what India is importing. That's where the vulnerability really bites.
Right. What kind of goods are we talking about?
Well, think foundational things for manufacturing. The data points of $44.15 billion a year just in electrical and electronic equipment.
$44 billion.
Yeah, and month to month. The big drivers are things like integrated circuits, chips, and telephones, or the parts for them. These aren't just gadgets, they're the building blocks India needs for its own factories.
Which brings us back to the policy response. India's countermove, the PLI scheme. How's that supposed to fix this?
So the PLI scheme, it covers 14 sectors now, and it has pulled in serious money, around $20 billion in investment by March 2025. Generated huge output too, about 16.5 lakh crore.
And the star example everyone points to is mobile phones, right? Exports shot up almost 8 times. India is now the world's second biggest mobile maker.
Yes, that's the flagship success story. Exports hit $23.1 billion by FY 2024-25. Huge jump.
So, doesn't that prove it's working, that the strategy is paying off?
It proves it's working for scale, for assembly volume. But here's the catch, the assembly trap, as the research calls it.
Assembly trap.
Yeah, that incredible export number, it's mostly final assembly, putting the pieces together. And where do those high-value pieces, the chipsets, the screens, mostly come from?
China.
Overwhelmingly. So paradoxically, the success in assembly actually deepens the reliance on importing those critical, high-value Chinese components.
Yeah.
India's solving the how many problem, but not the what's inside problem. The depth isn't there.
Okay, so it's like climbing one hill only to find a bigger mountain behind it. What's stopping India from getting that technological depth, true self-reliance?
Fundamentally, it comes down to a couple of big structural hurdles. The biggest, the innovation gap.
R&D spending.
Exactly. You can't design and make your own advanced components without serious, sustained investment in research and development. India's GERD, that's gross expenditure on R&D, it sort of bumps along at 0.6% to 0.7% of GDP.
And China's is?
Around 2.4%. That's cool. That's a massive difference. It represents years, maybe a decade or more, of needing to catch up technologically.
And it's not just R&D, is it? Getting things physically made and moved around costs more, too.
Right. Logistics. China built its manufacturing dominance partly on incredibly efficient, cheap logistics. India's logistics costs are higher, maybe around 8% of GDP. That might not sound huge, but it adds hidden costs for manufacturers.
It makes it harder to compete, especially in high-tech, mass-market stuff.
Precisely. Limits competitiveness right out of the gate.
So, given all this, India can't just wall itself off completely. After the border clashes in 2020, they put up barriers, right? Press Note 3, freezing Chinese investments.
They did. That was the initial firewall. But then came a pivot, more pragmatic approach.
Which was?
Conditional engagement. Instead of a total freeze, India started approving some Chinese investment, especially in electronics, but with very strict conditions.
Conditions like?
Mandating local value addition, forcing technology transfer, basically using access to India's huge market as leverage. Forcing Chinese companies to help build India's own manufacturing depth, not just use India for assembly.
Weaponizing market access. Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway for listeners trying to understand this contest?
Look, the real outcome hinges on this. Can India move beyond just assembling things? Can it start making the core components itself? We're selling semiconductors, solar wafers, the really advanced stuff.
If it just stays in assembly.
Then the strategic vulnerability remains. The dependency doesn't really change fundamentally.
So the final thought here is, it's not about the number of phones India puts together.
Not ultimately, no. The real battle, the path to genuine economic power here, it's about boosting that R&D massively. It's about achieving control over the technology inside the phone. That's the only escape from the assembly trap. That's the real challenge ahead.